Okay, now the video everyone's been waiting for, the smokes video, where I talk about autism and AI. Yep, maybe I should think of something else to add in. Um, so I was thinking about adding in some philosophy. A lot of times I'll ask Grok on X Twitter questions about philosophy or philosophical questions. So I may include those. Um, I noticed there are channels that are coming up with, or not coming up. There are channels that have videos that show interactions with AI, question and answer interactions with AI. There's at least one, maybe more. I'm assuming there's more. I'm not going to do that, although I can do that. The reason why I'm not going to do that is because it gives me a headache after about 10 minutes. Uh, when I asked questions, I'm using Twitter's AI, X Twitter's AI called Grok. I'm actually paying for the blue check mark on X Twitter. And one of the benefits is the AI. You get to ask the AI questions and have it help you with various tasks. One of the new features is it helps you generate images, which is kind of cool. I don't use the images, but I like seeing. Actually, that's not true. I've used an image of a bird on a branch that Grok generated for me in one of these smokables videos where there's a little on the side over here, there's a little animal with a question mark going, what's going on? One of those is an AI generated bird. I think it was the cardinal. Did I put a cardinal up? I know that was AI. Anyway, I might put a cardinal up on this one if I haven't used it before. But other than that, I don't use AI's image generation. I may in the future. It has a hard time with Stone Age type subjects anyway. It tends to mix the fantasy art with stone tools. It's just it's not smart enough yet. All right, what's today's mix? I found my grape leaves. I had them stored away in a shopping bag, and I thought it was shipping material, but no, it's my grape leaves. They've been sitting doing their thing for a couple months, aging, so maybe they'll be good. And then black raspberry, grape and black raspberry. Now I should shred these up. Maybe I can do it here. Yeah. All right, so I'll talk about something while I'm shredding these up. Um, what am I talking about today? I'm not going to be talking too much about the smokings, although I've been sampling the cigars again just so I can compare the taste. I want something that is similar to tobacco because I miss it. I'm sensitive to tobacco as far as the allergies go. It gives me a lot of irritation. I am allergic to tobacco. When I was little, I had a test, and tobacco came up as one of my allergens. I had a series of tests, not just one. I thought I had outgrown it because I was able to, put up with being in a room full of cigarette smoke without suffering too much. But after smoking a pipe and smoking pipe tobacco and smoking cigars, I realized that no, I still have that allergy. So I need to switch to something that is similar because I miss the taste. So black raspberry comes pretty close, and the grape came pretty close to tasting like that. I won't say what it is, but it's very similar to the word Tabasco. Yeah, Tabasco. Yeah, I laugh because it's funny. Well, I I don't have to monetize this video. I can just say whatever I want. In fact, if I demonetize it, I can say whatever I want. Yeah, I just might do that, just in case it slips out. Anyway, yeah, I should just demonetize all the smoking videos. All right, so here we go. I'll get into what I'm going to talk about in a minute. It has the scent of the burning leaves, the general burning leaves type scent. But it's pretty good, actually. Now I remember, the grape leaves and the black raspberry are good together, but I'm going to add some cedar. Yeah, because I taste cedar notes in the cigar. It could be just that type of tobacco, but I notice cedar notes, and I like it. So I'm thinking of adding cedar, like shreds of the cedar bark. Very little, because I know it's toxic. I think that might be good. So a 3-part blend of some cedar, grape, and black raspberry. Now this grape, I keep forgetting the name of it. If it's river grape, riverside grape, hillside grape, it's the wild stuff that grows out here. It's not the domestic or the domesticated grape. Wild river grape. Anyway, yeah. And this stuff doesn't make me sleepy or give me brain fog or a stomach ache. These two, the grape leaves and the black raspberry, they're both pretty neutral, which is excellent. And I'm going to keep them in this pipe only, so I don't mix other flavors in. So I can give you an update on how it's going as far as how to age these things. Normally what I want to do is be able to forage and fire it up in less than 4 hours. Now I'm going to wait till fall to give a final update on this idea I have of just gathering all the leaves in the fall as they naturally do this. I just picked these this morning from my black raspberry. These are Virginia creepers. I have black raspberry everywhere except right there. I can't show you, but anyway, the bottoms of the leaves are distinct because they're so much lighter in color than the tops. So if I get a lot of stuff, I've got morning glories, I've got Virginia creepers, and some other stuff. They'll all start dying back. But the black raspberry is very distinct because it has a light color underside. Very easy to forage and harvest and gather, which is really good. And the grape, these are so big that, I can't mistake these. Yeah. The black raspberry has a very strong taste. If I smoke it fast like this, the grape is also a bit spicy. All right, so what am I going to talk about? Autism. My sons have autism, in case you don't know. I'm not going to talk about their type of autism, although it used to be called high functioning. Now it's just called autism spectrum disorder instead of Asperger's or high functioning. And it runs in my family because I could tell my dad has it. And I don't presume to think that it skipped a generation. So I have it. I've taken tests online. I haven't taken a test by a professional. Now, I probably should just to squash any doubt. But there's I don't have any doubt personally, but yeah, I'll take it. I'll have a test administered by a professional eventually. And since I'm not monetizing these videos, I made a decision already. I've made the decision already in earlier part of this video that I'm just going to demonetize these. So I'm not doing this to make money. I just want to share the experience because for many years I was uh, literally mentally crippled because I didn't understand what was going on. And it would cause depression. It wasn't the autism that was a disabling thing. It was the depression caused by not understanding what was going on because of the autism. It's the depression and the anxiety and the anger and the mood disorders and all that result from your challenges that causes the disability, in my opinion. Autism has areas where you're very strong and very weak. There's hardly any middle ground. If you focus on those areas where you're very strong, an autistic person can be successful. Now, if you got ADHD mixed in, that makes it harder to be successful. Yeah. Much harder because of the executive dysfunction that comes along with ADHD, which means you know what to do, you know how to do it, you've got the means, you've got the ability, you got the desire, you just don't have the fire under your butt to do it. You actually have to be in a crisis situation in order for it to kick in that it's got to be done. With ADHD, you can be looking right at it. Everything's set up. The means, the ability, and the desire, the intent, nothing happens. And it causes depression. Why can you have the means, the ability, and the intent and nothing happen? It doesn't make any sense at all. That's the problem. How do you get over that? The quick answer is you can't. You have to look at yourself and say, there are some things that I can't do. And it looks like whatever I don't like is that. I can't do what I don't like. And it could change from minute to minute. I could like it in the beginning and start doing it, and something turns me off and it shuts me down. You have to live with that. So you've got to find what you like. And yeah, most ADHD people like to take naps and rest and spend money and watch TV and scroll videos and everything that is non-productive. Yeah, I know. Believe me, I know. I have symptoms of ADHD, but the tests that I've taken show that I'm not over that hump to actually be diagnosed or to seek a diagnosis for ADHD. Luckily, I don't have executive dysfunction to that extent where I just can't do it, because I can do things that I don't like doing. Yeah, that does help. And neurotypicals, you take that for granted that you're able to do it even though you don't like it. Do something even though it's something disgusting or whatever. To ADHD people, we have a high disgust reaction to things, and I think with autism as well. Anyways, what is the workaround for getting things done? Well, first you have to reduce all the symptoms. I know I say that casualty, but you have to reduce symptoms. You have to reduce side effects, which means you have to set up your environment. Set it up so there's no distractions, if you can, or to minimize distractions. set up your health to where you avoid everything that makes you feel sick. That's a hard one, especially if you're in a situation where your livelihood depends upon you being exposed to stuff that makes you feel sick. Yeah. You have to change your profession if possible, or you're going to have to work within that. Now, maybe you like doing something that makes you feel sick. Yeah. Maybe that's the only thing you're able to do. You found some things that you like doing, but it makes you feel sick. Eventually, you're going to burn out. And then what? You're not going to want to go back. Autists tend to not go back to things that they burn out with. Yeah, including relationships. I'm finding out. Well, I'm that way. If I burn out on something, I don't go back to it. It takes a lot for me to go back to something that I burn out on. So what do I do? What have I done in the past? What's the moral of this story about getting things done? I have to limit everything that makes me feel sick to the point where I get rid of all of it, if possible. And that has many components. The biggest one that was a game changer for me is changing my diet and go on an elimination diet of everything that made me feel sick after I ate it. And that's almost everything. That's like 99% of all foods. Yeah. It took me a year and a half to figure out which ones I could survive on without feeling sick. And it's meats, some cheeses, although any cheese makes me fat, but some cheeses agree with me and I can eat them and feel healthy. And water, but it has to be distilled water or highly filtered water because I'm sensitive to the chlorine. Makes me feel sick right away. Um, Meat, cheeses, some eggs, but that's also some eggs make me feel bad. I think it's the free range eggs are better than the industrial white eggs. The free range eggs seem to work better, and some greens. The greens that are very low in carbohydrates and low in oxalates, lettuce, arugula, and maybe cabbage. But as soon as the sugar level starts rising, I get fat on those. So iceberg lettuce, if I eat a lot of it, I get fat. I think it has sugar content. So I stick with romaine lettuce and arugula. Those two, they seem not to cause any weight gain. But I rarely eat those, maybe once a week, in one meal, one serving of that in one meal every week. Uh, I ordered some fiber, non-caloric fiber. I'm going to start adding that in my diet here coming up. I just received it today. Let's see if that actually helps me to feel better because I think I still have gut issues and I'm going to need some fiber. Okay. So that's that. The other thing that's a big game changer in my ability to function was having a solid intellectual foundation in what I'm believing reality is. I have to have a firm foundation in reality. I can't just have a firm foundation in something. It has to be an actual reality. How do you find what is actual reality? Yeah. Believe it or not, there is a huge number of people whose only function in their lives, and they've determined it to be, this is to create alternate realities. And not only to do that for themselves, but they're like everlasting avalanches of this stuff. And it floods everything with garbage. This every amount of discourse that you find and everything, it permeates everything because it just spews out like a volcanic cloud of molten ash and just kind of contaminates and poisons everything. I don't know why this is, but it's a fact. So grounding yourself in reality is a very difficult thing. But once you figure out how to do it, it helps tremendously. How do you do it? Right? Okay. You have to know what evidence is strongest. Supporting evidence is weak. Critical evidence against something is much stronger. Debunk as much as you can. Go on an elimination diet with information. Elimination diet with food, elimination diet with information. You test every bit of information against logical reasoning. Find the fallacies, find weak support. Almost all support for an argument or something is weak, even supporting evidence. For example, there's an old cliche that someone said all swans are white. Back in the day, this was an example back in the day, all swans are white. At that time, there were mountains. You could generate mountains of evidence for swan populations throughout the world, and they were all white swans. The preponderance of information supported the idea that swans were white until they discovered, with this is contrary evidence, that some swans are actually black down in Australia or New Zealand, wherever they're from. Just that one population, it could have been even one bird, debunked that mountain of supporting evidence for swans being white. Now, of course, the key word here is all. Okay, and people nowadays, they understand that particular scenario, so they say, it seems that all swans are white, or according to the data, the preponderance of data, they put a qualifier on it, so it sounds a little bit different, and then they can have a way out in case they're wrong. Well, I said it seems, I said it's a possibility, or it seems like data supported this, and I didn't say all. Okay, that's their way out. Plausible deniability. So watch for that. All right. Don't be discouraged. They're going to qualify everything these days because of the information age. They'll qualify everything so they can have a way out, and they can still appear to be correct. Ground yourself in reality with criticism. Debunk as much as you possibly can. And some of it's going to hurt. Some of it you've believed in all your life. You found some contrary evidence and you go, oh no, it's not true, is it? Not in all cases. And maybe in some cases it is, but it's not in all cases. And for someone with autism, what are the exceptions then? We found one exception. What's the other exception? Oh, it drives you nuts, right? Well, for a little while, it'll drive you nuts, but make sure you know what the exceptions are. Usually the exceptions are highly limited, okay? So there is that consolation. But for the most part, if you can debunk something, you can abandon it, even though it hurts sometimes. There will be some exceptions, but those, you can write notes and you can remember what those are, or whatever it takes for you to remember the exceptions, do that. But you've got to do it. Well, I have to do it. There are people, like I said, whose sole purpose in life is to make sure that they spout their alternate reality, and they'll be in your face constantly. You have to have a firm grounding in reality to counteract that effect. And it's especially difficult for autists. And I say autists, but not in a derogatory sense, but I don't know what other word to use. Maybe there's another one I can use in the next video. But you have to be grounded in reality. And this is especially hurtful when you start to understand human nature. Hurtful in the fact that it's heartbreaking that, yeah, you realize that some people, they don't care. Yeah, and it was very hard for me to believe that some people just don't care whatsoever. There's not even an ounce of, there's not a slight bit of concern for what they do. In fact, not only are they not concerned about what they do, but if you criticize what they're doing, they will double down and fight you, even though they know that they're committing a fallacy or whatever. They will double down and fight you and say that you are the problem. Because there's nuance. There's this thing now where they say there's a nuanced view of this. No, there's not a nuanced view in many of these issues. And I'm not being specific because I just want you to get the baseline that you've got to be grounded in reality. There may be nuances, but that's their word that sounds like exception, but it's not an exception. Okay? There are exceptions, and those are legitimate. If you can find positive evidence for that exception, fine. But if it's a nuanced view, and AI is guilty of doing this as well, it's not true. In many cases, this nuanced view is either a philosophical exercise or it's simply not true. Now, there's nothing wrong with philosophical exercises that delve into other realms of understanding, but those are meant to be analyzed specifically as philosophical concepts and not as regarded as a representation of reality. The crazy ones will say, yes, this philosophy is an alternate representation of reality. It's not. It's supposed to be analyzed as a specific or an alternate view. Maybe it'll give some insight or give you a little stepping stone into what actually is reality. Sometimes, if we don't understand the reality of a certain thing, we just make something up and then look for evidence for or against it and mold that view. And eventually we'll get to the correct reality. How do we know what the correct reality is? Let me recommend a book. It's called Conjectures and Refutations by Karl Popper. Karl with a K, K-A-R-L, Popper. Conjectures and Refutations. That book, I think there's an audio book of it too, will give you the correct perspective on the scientific method. Why do I say correct? Because it acknowledges that critical data is stronger than supporting data. Much stronger. And it delves into other areas too. And it gives you a firm foundation in the scientific method. And with that scientific method, you can finally start to weed out and go on an elimination diet of information. Okay? The elimination diet in food, the elimination diet in information, and there's one more. This is the hardest. The elimination diet in relationships. The elimination of relationships that are toxic and hurtful and unproductive. The hardest one for an autist to understand is the relationship dynamic. Everything seems easy compared to this one. And this one is the most gut-wrenching, but you got to do it. I had to do it. I told myself I got to do it, and it was not easy. At one point in my life, everything was being influenced by everything was being influenced by the work done by narcissistic and psychopathic personalities. Believe it or not. Yeah. I think it's because I couldn't see it on the surface that made me vulnerable to putting myself in situations where I was being manipulated uh, and exploited or uh, how should I say, or taken advantage of, for lack of a better word. And I did a lot of it voluntarily, and I said, fine, it's part of being human. You sacrifice, but no, you don't have to sacrifice needlessly at the hands of people who are just trying to get something out of you, and then when you're of no use, they discard you. Yeah. So at one point, I was experiencing this type of thing with my religion, my marriage, my job, and the general worldview and government, everything. I have to distance myself. At that time, I had to distance myself from all of those things. How do you distance yourself from government? I just had to make sure I knew, uh, make sure that I knew that I was looking at politicians and not the actual workings of government. Okay, I'm not going to get into it, but I was, under the impression that yeah, politicians lie, but their jobs are precarious because if they do a bad job, they can get voted out. There's some sort of checks and balances in there. No, unfortunately, there isn't. There isn't proper checks and balances. That's why I consider myself a classical liberal who believes in limited government. And what that means is just limited control by uh, authoritarians. Okay? It's anti-authoritarian. It's an anti-authoritarian viewpoint. Okay? So this is the hardest area to deal with because it can get you literally into trouble and ruin your life. The side effects of breaking away from relationships that are toxic can actually be worse than being in the relationship itself. They're both bad. But yeah, this is the area where you have to be very careful about the side effects. And it's on purpose too. Many times a relationship with an authoritarian is one of dependency. You're dependent on the authoritarian and they know it. They've done it on purpose and made you dependent and caused you to go into a certain area of your life where if you deviate, you can feel that resistance. You can't deviate enough to escape because you've got a dependency. So you have to work on your dependencies by becoming independent in as many areas as possible. As an autistic person, that's difficult. We need support in certain areas where we are absolutely clueless. I laugh because, yeah, there are areas where we're absolutely clueless, unfortunately, and we need guidance and support. So, yeah, there's that. All right, it's already 34 minutes. I was going to talk about some AI stuff. I was talking about, oh, I was asking Grok about, uh, see, how do I say this without saying the words? Let me think of an analogy first. Because if I say the words, there's going to be a disclaimer back in underneath the description box or in front of the description box saying current blah 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 about this topic can be found here. Let me see. Anyway, let me just talk in general terms. There's a fallacy where it says lack of evidence or absence of evidence is evidence of absence. That's a fallacy. It's wrong. Just because there's no evidence of it doesn't mean that it's absent. The absence of evidence doesn't mean that it's absent. Okay, for example, I looked all through here and I don't find any evidence of, let's just make something up, the black-headed earthworm. I've looked all through here, I've dug it all out, and there's no evidence of a black-headed earthworm, so there's no black-headed earthworms. I can make the statement there's no black-headed earthworms because I looked all through here. And because I can't find any, that means there isn't any. That's a fallacy, because there could be. I might have missed it. Yet government will repeatedly, on many occasions, say, that doesn't exist because we can't find any evidence. We can't find any evidence of it, so that means it doesn't exist. Okay. They ignore that there's suppression of evidence. They ignore the thing about insufficient evidence. Well, no, it's not. It's not insufficient. It doesn't meet the criteria to rise to the level of evidence, and that kind of thing. They mess with the evidence to where it's not taken into account, and they just brush aside all kinds of stuff on the basis that it doesn't rise to the level of evidence. It doesn't meet the criteria, and yada yada yada. All these excuses to push away the evidence, in many cases, as well as completely denying the existence of evidence, and maybe there isn't any evidence to support it. And then they say, because of that, it doesn't exist. It's a fallacy. All right. How do you ground yourself in what is the reality in that case then? Well, first of all, you know that there may be some black-headed earthworms in there. There might be. All right, first of all. Now, how do you establish that there are? Or let's say that I'm set out to prove this, that there are not black-headed earthworms in there. This is what I have to do. Instead of denying that, instead of using the lack of evidence as a denial, I have to set up the testing, the procedures, and the equipment for looking for this black-headed earthworm. I have to set up what can be used to find these earthworms. Everything possible that I can, everything possible, and the situation where I won't be missing anything. So what I'll actually have to do is take up all of the topsoil down to the bare rock to where there's no life other than bacteria, as an example. And then all that other stuff sift through every little bit of it. And not only for the eggs of this earthworm, but for the remains, dead remains, or from the scat or whatever comes out of the earthworm. Set up all this stuff so I can prove to you that my setup and my testing is sufficient to prove that there is black-headed earthworms in here. But with all this setup, it didn't find it. And with this setup that I've got, there's no way I could have missed them in that area. I had to specify the boundaries of that area. Within this area, I did everything possible to test, and I'll show you my security measures and my decontamination methods, and it's not going to be confused with anything else, and all this stuff. That will be sufficient proof that there aren't any in here. Okay? The proof is not in the lack of evidence. The proof is in the testing, in the method that you set up so that you won't miss it if it's in there. Okay? And does that mean, oh, well, there's no evidence then in that case? No. That's not the only thing. Yeah, sure, there's no evidence in that case, but you're looking in the context of this framework. The framework for the testing is the important thing, okay? Not the lack of evidence itself. Okay, there will be lack of evidence, but the framework is what you need to have established, and that can be critiqued. Well, you didn't look for this and that. Oh, shucks, I forgot. Yeah, let's add that in the criteria, then look again. No, still didn't find it. Okay, but it's the testing and the setup and how good it is that is proof. It's not in the actual result. It's in the testing, because I can move over a little bit and then find the black-headed earthworm, possibly. Okay? I hope that's clear enough. I made it kind of vague, which is autists hate, but I don't want to be specific in certain things, even though I demonetized the channel or demonetized the video. If I don't keep track of exactly what I'm saying by saying it first in my head, I'll say the wrong thing. Yeah, I told you that before, right? The 3 steps in me saying something, I have to say it in my head first, and then I have to analyze it. And then I say it. Hopefully, the brain and mouth is connected properly when I say it, because I can be thinking the correct one and say the wrong thing, and then listen to see if I made a mistake. And yeah, I make mistakes even if I say it in my head first. Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to try to come up with a better way of saying this, but for now, you have to eliminate what's toxic, both in your diet, in your relationships, and in the information you're looking at. Okay, there you go. I'm not going to get into what I talked about with Grok on X Twitter because it's sensitive. I'll get a little disclaimer notice in the bottom. I hate those little disclaimer notices. Yeah. All right. And going back to the thing where all swans are white. If you had looked throughout the entire Earth and set up a test for swans on the entire Earth, you would have found the black swans pretty fast. Okay? That's what I mean by the setting up the proper testing, the proper criteria for finding the truth. If you can't find it within that framework, that's the important thing. It's the framework that's important. It's the framework. Okay. All right, I think that's it. I forgot to measure something earlier on the other video. Oh yeah, one more thing about the smokables. I tried the silky dogwood bark. again. And it gives me brain fog, but it's the type of brain fog that calms me down and helps me to sleep. So I may use it. I haven't been getting any sleep lately. Yeah, I've been getting sleep, but not steady. 3 and 4 hours at a time. Waking up after 3 or 4 hours at a time is not fun. It would help if I go to sleep faster. That way I can get 4 to 5 hours at a time, as an example. All right. And it's not because of my personal symptoms, it's just my situation I'm in right now. My dad wakes up quite a bit now. He's going through a stage where he doesn't sleep much. And he'll make noises and stuff. I can't sleep through the noises. And he doesn't realize that he'll talk to himself. And I'm thinking he's asking me something, that kind of thing. I sleep in the same room. It's a very small house. So yeah, it wakes me up. Anyway, I just come out here to my happy place and everything's good for a little while. All right, there you go. That's it.